And what are we cooking?
Sorry, I've just opened the document, and it's what do we think of Anderson? What are our faves? It's just one bullet point: fancy lad.
More on that later. Right, hello and welcome back to the Sony Skinny. It's the film podcast from The Skinny Magazine. The whole gang is here at ground floor, the EHFM studio on Junction Street. It's quite warm outside, but weirdly foggy. The har is coming. The early summer is over. Nah.
I don't think it is, actually.
It's going to stay sunny forever. It's me, Anahit, Ellie, and Jamie. Everybody say hello.
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 Good job. Got that one. Got that first time. No need to cut that. Excellent. No edits. We'll move on. So, 2 films this week. Magic Farm, which is the new one from Amalia, Ulman, Chloe Sevigny, about a bunch of, I'm going to say very close to home, bunch of hipster journalists running off in circles, not knowing what they're doing. So, you know, talk about what you know. And then Good One, which is the new India Donaldson, which is about a camping trip that doesn't go very well. You know, there'll be more on that later. This is just the preamble, the intro to the podcast. The rest of it is coming shortly.
Is that for anyone who's never heard a podcast?
That's for anyone who's like, oh, this guy's...
Or understands the concept of an introduction.
He's just really glossing over it. Yeah, he's just really glossing over it. He doesn't seem to be like dwelling on anything for particularly long. He seems to be in a hurry to introduce other people to then talk. It's very strange. But I suppose they have all sorts of things in the big city nowadays, even podcasting. And we're also going to talk about Wes Anderson. Because the new Wes Anderson is coming out at the end of the week, and we couldn't get a screener, and not enough of us, if any of us, could go to the press screening in Glasgow yesterday. So, there you go. Did you watch it, Jamie?
It wasn't... it's on next week.
Oh, is it next week? Yeah. Because it comes out the week after this. Ah, okay.
I was going to say, because it hasn't shown at Cannes yet, has it?
It hasn't shown at Cannes yet.
Imagine if they did like a Glasgow press screening before it showed at Cannes at the Cineworld. That would be iconic.
Yeah. That'd be great fun. I love those press screenings at the Glasgow Cineworld. Just like going all the way up to the top, seeing what's what. Anyway, enough from me. Let's talk about what everyone's been watching. A little bit of preamble, a little bit of pre-banter. Jamie, what have you got for me? What have you been watching? Something good, no doubt? Or maybe something bad? Don't know which would be better for the podcast. Let's find out. Let's let him go. I'll stop interrupting in a second. I'm nearly done. I think you're ready. I feel like you're ready. I think you could go now.
Yes.
But it certainly seems that way. Oh, I'm having fun today. Right, Jamie, go.
Well, talking about those Glasgow press screenings, I did go to one yesterday. I treated myself to a little 9:30 a.m. screening of the new Final Destination film.
Ooh.
And I can't even remember. I'm actually thinking about it. I don't even know its name. Final Destination...
Bloodlines.
Because it's all about the family affair. It's about a family. You know how usually it's a random bunch of people who are like moving around on some sort of transport and get
I've never
saved.
seen any of these.
You've never seen it? Oh my god.
No.
So, Anahit, we discussed, I think it was one time you were away, we discussed the Final Destination franchise in a little bit of detail. Basically, it's about a catastrophe that doesn't befall a group of people. They get out of it somehow.
Because one of them has a premonition usually.
Yeah.
So
And then they get punished.
and then what happens is, well, they just get the...
death doesn't like that.
tragedy catches up with them in a variety of hilarious ways.
Okay, I did see the trailer for this one, and it involved like a septum ring. Was that it?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Is that the vibe?
Yeah. It's
Like
all the
every film has multiple scenes of just like Rube Goldberg machines of things going wrong.
Yeah, it's the classic
This
thing.
sounds like my hell.
Someone avoids like a boat crash or something, and the next thing you know, they're at like a farm, and then they step on a duck's foot, and the duck quacks in a swan's face, and the swan flaps its wing, and then that hits like an electrical transformer, which then like derails a tram, and then the tram crashes into them.
Like all good horror, it makes you think.
Yeah. Makes you think, and it's crucially relatable to your life in the real world. Jamie, how was Final Destination Bloodlines? Sorry, I've interrupted you again.
I mean, you basically review the film because it's essentially the same as all the other Final Destination films, which is why it's great. It's like actually, it's one of the best franchises I think of this century, in that it gives you exactly what you want. Like it's like every one is the same apart from one, which is bad. Not one. Number 4 is bad because it breaks the formula. But otherwise, the formula is exactly the same. This one's a slight twist in that it's a family who are punished. So it's like one person saves themselves in the 50s from a kind of like it's like a kind of Space Needle style disaster. It's like a kind of one of these kind of like 50s style kind of restaurants in the air that spin around, and then like a series of disasters happen and loads of people die, but one person saves them. and death waits so long that this person has got a family of a bunch of little assholes. I gotta say, like a bunch of like cousins who are all annoying, and like sort of aunties and uncles who have like family parties and they're all terrible. And then the death comes and kills them all. And what I love is like the series is just so pitiless. It does not, like usually in a horror, like the cute kid escapes or the nice girl escapes, or your hero usually survives. Nobody survives any Final Destination films, and no matter who they are, they're going to get punished. Death always comes, and it's just that's a true thing about life. Death comes to us all, and in Final Destination films, it usually comes to you in hilariously inappropriate ways.
I have a question. Do you ever see death? Like, is death a personified
Death is always
thing?
like a little bit of wind or something. There's always there's a lot of wind chimes in these films. There's always
That's
like
fucking crazy.
there's always like a little gust of wind, and that kind of moves like a pencil. And as Peter says, like that'll move
the
like
pencil lands on the duck's back.
And it always has to have like quite creative kills, and there's a few kind of very fun death sequences in this one.
So it's like a slightly camper and more Looney Tunes-esque version of like a Saw film. In that it's like a series of like traps.
Looney Tunes is a good way to think about it. It's very kind of
yeah.
Wile E. Coyote death in terms of the way he kills everyone. Very entertaining. And then a slightly more esoteric film I watched at the weekend was Grand Tour. The Miguel Gomez film, or Gomes. I don't know how you say his name. Is it Gomes or just Gomez? Anyway, great filmmaker from Portugal. His film, I don't know why it passed me by, but I just found it on Mubi at the weekend. Really great movie. Like a lot of his films, it mixes documentary and fiction. So essentially, the main story is about a guy who's like a kind of British. We're never sure if he's a spy, but he's a kind of British person working in Burma. In 1917, and his wife is coming, or his fiance is travelling to get married, and for some reason he just decides, I'm going to leg it, and he just starts going across Eastern Asia, and then that's the first half of the movie. We follow him as he goes to like Bangkok and Singapore and Saigon and Osaka, and then she arrives in the second half, and then the second half follows her and her adventures. And then in between, we see lots of kind of documentary footage of these cities today. It's an amazing film, like really beautiful. Like all the kind of 1917 stuff is like very stage bound. Intentionally looks like it was made in 1917. It's like that's kind of a vibe it's going for. And then all the new stuff, very beautiful, sort of freewheeling, like looking a lot of kind of performance. So things like looking at sort of puppeteers and sort of show people and things like that. Not exactly sure how they link, but as a film, as an experience, I would really recommend it. So that's on Mubi, and it's kind of amazing. So
Delightful. I mean, that is a hell of a double bill.
Yeah,
as well.
really fucking hell.
Does anyone get Final Destination in Grand Tour?
We have a Final Destination vibe here. This is threatening to fall at any moment, and I'm worried it's going to
Wait, your mic?
a chain reaction of
Oh yeah, no, Jamie's mic is just fully trying to come off the...
Has performance anxiety.
Yes.
A classic joke.
Yeah.
Never gets old.
A classic joke, and also a classic bit of verbal comedy as well.
Just to loop the listener in.
Yeah. Yeah, to loop the listener in, Jamie's microphone stand is drooping. And that's the joke.
It's really giving how many journalists does it take to turn a screw.
Righty tighty.
What I would say, Anahit, is you can't make that comment when you're not helping at all.
Yeah, I can. I'm documenting.
Oh, fair enough. Christ, she's actually got a camera out.
We've escaped death. Yeah, again.
That's how it gets you, though. It's the mic falling.
Yeah.
Usually what would happen is I'd also spill my bottle of water and they'd be all over the floor and then you'd all get electrocuted.
Yeah. I think what would happen in this
You'd
one...
actually survive in this case.
Yeah, I'd be so frightened.
Yeah.
That's why I sit here.
You cheat death and then death comes after you. That's how it works.
Yeah, I think what would happen is Jamie would lean forward to try and get the mic. He would then fall face first off his chair, but his legs would go up into there, kick the door closed, and then when the door closed, that would cause something else to fall.
And we'd all be trapped.
We'd all be trapped,
during the
and
fire,
then there'd just be
we'd burn alive.
smoke somewhere, and like there's a mirror over here that would get involved
It's not a
somehow.
mirror, it's a frame, actually. It's
So,
mine.
so there's a frame over here.
Can you see yourself in it?
There's a yes, I can
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah. So I thought me as some boy with a big hood on, a scepter, and a duck for some reason. Anyway, Ellie, now that that's all out of the way, see how much of that stayed in the edit, see how much sense this next bit makes. Ellie, what have you been watching?
So
For the love of God, let's hope it's a good film.
I think it's a good film. So
Woo.
I've talked before about The Fly and how good The Fly is, except the worst thing about The Fly is that Gina Davis gets done dirty. She has a boss who's also her ex, who also has keys to her apartment, which is an insane problem to have to begin with. And then the new romantic lead turns into a fly. That sucks. But I have found a spiritual...
Africa could not make it up.
Yeah, tough break, Queen.
A spiritual sequel that's a ride or die Gina Davis film. Has anybody seen Earth Girls Are Easy?
Oh, yeah.
It's so fun. It's like a late 1989 maybe, like romantic comedy musical. Its aesthetic is just like the 80s. In that same way that like Stranger Things has like quite a difficult suspension of disbelief because not everybody in the 80s dressed like a 80s clothes horse, right? It's not actually that fashionable, right? It's kind of like a nostalgia. But no, this is the 80s, full-on hardcore, the 80s. Gina Davis is getting cheated on by her like scumbag fiance, and then a bunch of like fucking glip glorps from Planet Blorzon crash land in her pool, and she like is like, oh, she just rolls with it. She's like, oh, I guess you don't have to deal with boyfriends in outer space. And she just like gets to have a little fun little like fish out of water with these like creepy little guys who talk in gibberish. They're covered head to toe in like purple fur or green fur. And there's of course like a great big 80s makeover montage, but not for Gina Davis, for the three aliens. And when they get shaved down, you realise that they're played by Damon Wayans, Jim Carrey, and that's right, your boy the fly, Jeff Goldblum. And it's just so, like, I kind of, like, I've been wanting to watch it for ages, but I had that thought of, like, this is, like, a very kind of poppy, fun chick flick from the 80s. Might it be one of those ones that actually is like, haha, aren't women dumb? And it's kind of a bummer, actually. But no, like, it's fully on her side the whole time. It's really, really fun. It just gives you exactly what you want. It's so unbelievably silly. You get to see, like, I don't know, like, Jim Carrey doing his thing of, like, running around being a little mental freak and stuff like that, but Jeff Goldblum becomes, like, a sexy alien. And not in the David Cronenberg way. But yeah, it's just the other Gina Davis, Jeff Goldblum on-screen romance from the 80s with extraterrestrial themes that doesn't go terribly horrible for them. So out of everything I've watched recently, that's probably...
Delightful stuff. How did you watch it?
On Blu-ray.
Excellent. So get down the shops. In fact, read that article as well that, is it Lucy Fitzgerald wrote about DVDs and how they're good. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have a physical collection of things.
Mm-hmm. It is. My friend Anna, when she didn't have Wi-Fi for like a month, just got a bunch of DVDs from the library and like really like art house esoteric. She's also a film critic. But still, I, as we will talk about in a second, that is not what I did with my lack of Wi-Fi in the last couple of weeks. But she watched so much cinema. Isn't that crazy? That's the thing that you can do. Sometimes I go to Central Library and their film collection is like so good. And I'm like, oh, I could do this. But I don't.
Well, that's something to, put that on the list for... Is there such a thing as a half-year resolution? No. Anahit, what have you got for us? I feel like you set it up quite nicely there. Bring it home.
Well, yeah, I haven't had Wi-Fi, which is why I haven't watched the films today. But
Can I push your microphone slightly closer so you can tell us in full high quality...
In HD sound.
In HD what you've been watching, parentheses, it's not the films we were talking about.
It's not the films we're talking about. I've been hotspotting off my phone and watching Love is Blind UK.
Respect.
Which I don't actually have that much to say about it. It is much the same. But I do have a question that I've been asking lots of people. Do you think you could fall in love with someone whose accent you hate?
No.
Yeah, I also think this. But then some people are like, no, I could. This is, like, I'm really now worried that, like, the love of my life, the person that will fix all my problems, will enter my life with a really strong Essex accent. Like, I'm really quite concerned that might happen. And I don't know if
It's a shame I don't have an Essex accent, like, on deck at the moment. I'm trying to work out what it'd be. I was going to go like Dick Van Dyke, but I don't think that's quite right.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite it.
Yeah. The love of my life is Dick Van Dyke, so I actually don't mind that accent at all.
Do you think you could?
Yeah.
I'm racking my brain trying to think of, like, accents that I hate.
Because I feel like usually what happens when you fall in love is you actually fall in love with everybody's foibles as well. So, like, actually...
Yeah, but an Essex accent is quite a big foible.
And I think that
No
like,
offense
you
to
love...
Essex.
like surely the person you love has like a way of speaking independent of their accent, like a cadence that you like,
right?
or something.
Yeah, I just really like people's voices and how they talk, and so I think if it was something that like immediately gave me the ick.
What immediately gives you the ick?
The Essex
Is
accent.
just the
No,
Essex
but it's because you're thinking of Essex as the people who are speaking it are thick. But actually, if you had a really nice person who's well, I'm just saying like because that's what the shows are about. I'm not saying everyone from Essex is thick, but I bet there's like loads of lovely people from Essex, and it's just because like the people you see on telly from Essex are arseholes.
Or on Love Is Blind. Yeah, maybe that is it. Yeah, I think there is like an over-saturation of Essex accents on reality TV. And so maybe I have come to, much like how whenever I hear the Geordie accent, it is just the Big Brother accent. And I really hate it. But I love the rest of the Yorkshire, like the North accents. So maybe it is just okay, anyway. That's good to know.
Also, the people of Yorkshire are going to be thrilled to be thrown in with Newcastle. You know, I love old Yorkshire, whatever the fuck it is. I don't know what they're up to. You know, that lot up there. / down there.
Yeah, I really don't think I also have the accent to be able to be pulling off this slander of the UK. It doesn't sound good coming from me.
But I think that's as good a time as any to move on to our first film of the week. Yes, that's right, we've done the fun bit. Now we can talk about some films, which are actually, I think, this week quite good. Not to spoil anything, but it's not a spoiler. They're just good films. Anyway, Magic Farm, film 1. So this is a new film from Mubi. It's about an achingly hipster documentary crew travelling from the US to Argentina to shoot a film about a unique musical subculture that centres around musicians dressed as rabbits. Now, their main problem that they have is that they've gone to the wrong place and no one is dressed as a rabbit. And their secondary problems are a large part of what drives the drama in this comedy satire of the media, a thing that we all work in. So we could immediately see the problems with what they were up to. So it's got Chloe Sevigny, Simon Rex, Alex Wolff from Hereditary, and the director, Amalia Ulman, the Argentine filmmaker and artist, is also in it, playing a kind of like key role as seemingly the one member of the team who understands anything about anything. But even then, that's still limited because these people, Ellie, are chumps, idiots, fools, buffoons, and oafs. And they're on the road. They're on the way to your town. What did you think of Magic Farm?
Yeah, I liked it. Did the premise remind anybody else of like a slasher horror film? Like a group of like completely underprepared, dysfunctional, very sort of privileged, snooty, urban twerps, like wind up in like deep rural country with like no actual knowledge of what's going on or anything like that. Except like it's like Cannibal Holocaust, except like it doesn't actually go anywhere near there. It's not a horror. It's sort of a comedy, but in a very kind of like subversive, kind of understated way. Like it's immediately like very kind of like poppy and watchable, right? It's very like highly saturated colors. We cut between scenes with weird camera spins and kind of like, I don't know, like internet video transitions.
It's amazing the footage you can get when you strap a GoPro to the back of a dog.
True,
or in some cases, a horse.
But in terms of like what the film actually contains, like it relies heavily on like dramatic irony, right? Like the audience are noticing all this stuff that people keep offhandedly sometimes explicitly mentioning about like, you know, unethical agricultural practices in South America, but because these you know, nerdy journalists are so shit at their jobs, none of them can actually like detect when there's something interesting. They're only looking for something that's like memeable or going to go viral. So there is this like quite like dark, serious idea that's running through it, but it's always kind of on the periphery. It's never really the focus of the film, which is interesting. I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about like where we go with the characters, because some of them go in completely different directions. Some of them form weird kind of will they won't they romances with the locals, which are sometimes really funny and awkward, and sometimes just, yeah, I don't know. Like Alex Wolff certainly seems to think that it's a comedy. He's kind of chosen to be the whiniest, wettest, most miserable, pathetic man ever. In literally every scene, he's just in the fetal position on a couch going like, why is everyone being mean to me?
He is, in this film, a first-class cunt. It's a really good performance of someone who just really needs a slap. And at one point, Chloe Sevigny, who plays the kind of like anchor of this like journalistic unit, tells him to stop taking so much ketamine, he's not a pony.
Yeah.
And his response is, but maybe I am a pony. It's like...
Like, maybe, like, yeah, like, the thing is, they're never going to meet the kind of, like, I don't know, grisly doom that you would expect from something like, I don't know, like a horror film, but at the same time, like, they're never really, like, brought up for their bullshittery. They actually have quite, like, touching human moments with the kind of, like, community that they've wound up stranded in, and they kind of leave, and it's a little bit unclear kind of what each of them is kind of taken from it. So I don't know about this one. I found it really, really entertaining, and I appreciated that they kind of, like, you know, they land here, and also the locals are so, like, polite and welcoming that they can't even really, like, bring up the terrible things they're facing, or when they are bringing it up, like, again, these journalists are just not paying attention. So it's a bit, like, strange. There's something about it where I can't quite decide if I like that the film just never really gratifies the audience for what they understand and what the characters don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like a satire of terrible people, but it doesn't really put the knife in. You know, I think she actually likes everyone. She's a bit of a humanist. She like actually likes these characters, and even though they are like clueless Americans abroad, being really culturally insensitive, and you know, like not recognizing that, you know, there's something wrong with this village. You know, nobody's drinking the water. There's a lot of people who have clearly got cancer. There's a lot of kind of birth defects. What's going on? But they never kind of dig any deep because they're not interested. They're so self-absorbed. But yeah, she never kind of punishes them for that. Actually, like you say, what she gives them is all little nice little arcs, little stories. So yeah, it is a funny one. I was just charmed though because despite it not having much meat on the bone and maybe not tons to say, and actually feeling a bit dated, like I think somebody mentioned in the office, like, you know, a satire on the kind of a Vice style sort of journalism is a bit dated. You know, that's like sort of almost 20 years ago now, that kind of like the idea of being a real journalist embeds himself within a community and sort of details these subcultures. It's a little bit old fashioned, but in saying that, I did think every scene had a kind of lovely little flourish. I thought it looked great. I thought it really popped. I loved all the kind of like asides where it will go a wander on a dog's back, and we follow people around the village. I just thought like the cast was great. I agree. Alex Wolff is hilarious. He's so funny. Like just even the way he sits on a chair made me laugh. Like he's just like such a little dweeb, but something's charming about him. I loved his fashion. Like I think his clothes look amazing in this film. Like there's a stripy Where's Wally outfit and sort of jeans. I want to dress like that, even though he looks foolish. He just looks cool at the same time. Simon Rex is in it for a very short period of time, but he's very funny. And I actually thought some of the lesser known people were great. Like Alex Wolff's character kind of starts a kind of like little flirtation with this young woman who's, I think she's trying to be an influencer, or she might have OnlyFans. It's never actually quite clear what she's up to, but she's got like this birthmark on her face, but she's also just incredibly striking, like a very incredibly charismatic person. I think she's called Camilla Del Campo. She's great. She's got the, like, it starts off with her like being a bit clueless because she like she like really likes it. Talking about accents, she really likes his accent. She'll listen to like this podcast where he's talking absolute gibberish, and she's getting really horny and like turned on by it. But then I think she gets the measure of and realizes he's an idiot. And there's a really adorable, totally made by surprise. So there's this one sort of side character is a kind of himbo called Justin, who's like the sound guy, like really kind of like sort of hot, kind of like ridiculous haircut. And he kind of starts to fall in love with the receptionist, who's this kind of chubby little butterbean, who's like this single dad. And it's like, oh my God, it's so sweet. I just wanted them to get together. So it's just full of those kind of little warm moments. It's like a really warm film, even though it's kind of, you think you're going to be seeing a kind of really kind of cutting satire, but it's like a satire that's so soft and gentle. So yeah, I don't get, at the end of the day, it says anything particularly novel about Americans abroad, or, you know, the way kind of like we treat kind of like cultures which we like that aren't seen as kind of like being like equivalent to Western cultures, but like it's just such a nice film, like where everyone sort of gets kind of a little bit of humanity that, you know, I was very happy with it. And like I say, it looks amazing, like the colours, the saturation of everything. Yeah, it's gorgeous. So it looks like it's got a kind of 90s music video vibe. Like that's the kind of vibe I got. It's like looks like a really kind of pretty Harmony Korine film, I would say, is how it would look. Yeah,
I think one of the thing that I like from both of you saying that it's kind of a satire that doesn't really bite that much. The thing that I felt about it is it sort of shows that being an idiot is its own punishment. Like these people are so It's because when they're contrasted with the locals in this, small Argentinian village who clearly understand what is happening to them from, basically agricultural-based pollution that's being like just dropped on their village. They clearly understand what's happening. They understand the consequences of it. There are people in this village who have like complicated relationships with like friends and partners and stuff, and they all like seem to have a sense of who they are and what they're talking about. Whereas these, oafs from the internet have just sort of turned up, don't find anything out, don't really learn anything of any note, and then leave kind of bereft of anything they can really take with them. And it's almost like you can almost read it as like that is their. They don't all get like run over by a bus or something. They get something that's almost worse, which is just that like they haven't learned anything. They've just wasted a bunch of time, and they've interacted with a bunch of people who are clearly like smarter than they are, more switched on than they are, more aware of their surroundings than they are, and better at forming relationships than they are. And when they're going around the world kind of making out that they can divine what's going on in different places and then that bring that information back to them, it's like their job is doing info and they can't do it even on like a basic personal level. So that's I really enjoyed it. I read up a bit on Amalia Ulman. So Amalia Ulman did this project in like 2014, I want to say, where they basically like made this sort of like spoof Instagram it girl persona and went on this kind of, they built this like narrative arc of all these things that would happen to them, and then kind of like basically did a kind of like low key, maybe not quite hoax, but a kind of thing where they were sort of like creating this imagined narrative and then encouraging people to believe it was true on Instagram. It seems like she has a sense of like how media operates basically and how people interact with it and how it's crucially like how it's produced and how like all these things are artifice. All documentary films are fake to one extent or another. All Instagram accounts are some like really edited down version of who you are. And it's like, well, what does that actually do to you as a person? Like you were saying, Jamie, very humanistic to say, like, what would it do to a person if they just spent their whole day just blatantly fabricating things, but it turned out that they didn't know how to Google properly. It's like they'd probably end up being an absolute fool, a buffoon, Ellie. An oaf. My new favourite word, oaf.
But what like is it does like I think what makes it work is like actually there's a sense of like the villagers are ripping the Americans off, but the Americans don't care because they're rich. Like there's a point where like they're just handing over money, and the guy behind the counter is like pointing more. I'll take the dollars as well. They know they're getting ripped off, but they don't care. And it's like in another film, like they would be incensed that they're being like it'd be like the kind of Westerners would be incensed that they're being sort of ripped off by the locals, but actually they don't. They're just quite happy to be here, and yeah, it's a strange film. It's like it's as if she went there with a plan to humiliate these characters, but then sort of fell in love with them in a little bit of a way. And that's how I feel about the film. Like I was ready to hate all these characters, but actually by the end I kind of love them. Even Alex Wolff's character Jeff, who is a moron, who is the most callous young man ever, who's cheating on women and sort of, yeah, I kind of like him. You know, like, and I think there's something that's quite a talent. I think to like make you like all the characters, even the kind of horrible parts of them, you know. So yeah, I end up really liking the film.
Yeah, I had a lovely time with this. I say lovely time. I mean, I did hate them all, but you can have a lovely time while being a hater. It's my whole job. Ellie, out of 5, what did you think?
3.5.
Nice. Jamie, out of 5.
Yeah, I think I'll go a 4. I really enjoyed watching this film. Like, it really tickled me. I thought it was very funny.
I'm also going to give it a 4. I quite liked it. I thought it was good fun, and I liked how many animals there were in it. Unexpected number of horses and dogs. You'd think you're going to get 1 or 2, especially from a lot of the press photos, which are of Chloe Sevigny embracing a horse for some reason. But you get more than you expect. You get more than you bargained for with Magic Farm.
No ducks, which is good.
Yes, well, I mean, for everyone's sake. Okay, second film of the week, Good One. So this is the debut film from India Donaldson. It follows a fraught father's friend, daughter camping trip. James LeGros is Chris, he's the dad. Danny McCarthy is Matt, he's the friend. And Lily Collius is Sam, the daughter. Now, I didn't watch this one for various reasons. I was very busy at the weekend. So, Jamie, I'll come to you first on this one. Good One. Question mark?
Was that a good one?
He's cracked the code. He's cracked the code, Ellie. He's on to me.
Yeah, this is like such a kind of quiet, delicate little drama that I'm almost like, I feel like talking about it too much would sort of ruin it, because it's like so much of
This will be a quick segment then.
Well, that's the thing. So much of the pleasure of the film is actually just in. If you describe what happened, you think, oh, that seems like quite incidental and sort of. But that actually, a lot happens. It's one of these films where nothing happens and a lot happens. And that maybe sounds like code for a boring film, but actually I found it really entertaining. It's focused on Sam, Lily Collius, who is amazing. I think she's really good, and she barely speaks, and she's like lumbered with these two old friends. Her dad, who's like this kind of uptight divorced guy who's remarried, and he's like just like sort of so naggy. You know, he's like the worst person to go on a camping trip with because he's just like not fun. You know, and then she's with Matt, who's this oaf, this kind of sad sack. Again, another divorced guy, but he never remarried, and he's just like depressed and not equipped for camping at all. You know, he's turned up without a sleeping bag. He's turned up with like ridiculous things that you would never take camping on a hike, and he's like overweight, so no way is he going to keep up with it, Bjorn. And she's sort of in the middle, trying to like broker the friendship essentially. Like, these guys clearly don't like each other. Matt is actually quite mean to Chris and like sort of quite dismissive, and so often she catches herself like has to catch her dad's eye and sort of say, come on, that's a bit cruel. So because of that, Chris sort of takes that kindness as kind of like, you know, he's such a pitiful character that he sort of sees more in that kindness than maybe is there. And that's the kind of shifting dynamic. It's a film where like you've got three characters who the dynamic between the three is always moving, and in the middle is this young woman who's basically carrying these two like man children around. You know, I've seen it described as a coming of age film, but actually this girl's mature already. She doesn't really come of age. She's actually realizes her dad's useless, and she's like doing everything. She's like putting up the tent, she's making the food, she's cleaning up, and these two guys would also think that they weren't sexist, and they don't really do sexist things. They're kind of nice guys, but actually they're not nice guys in another way. And the film is like subtle enough not to like spell out in ways they're not good guys, but like it demonstrates again and again that Sam is not treated well by her dad and her friend, but just in quite subtle ways. But to explain it would spoil it, I think. But it's just a very kind of smart script where it doesn't feel it needs to say too much. It just sort of lets it all play out on screen. And it's also a film that you're talking about, a film that you think it's going to be a horror film. Like three people going into the woods, you think something bad, really bad, is going to happen. So they bump into like three younger guys who are kind of quite rowdy and kind of boisterous. You think this is going to end badly. It doesn't at all. It just ends up with like the dad's been a little bit embarrassed because these kind of young guys are kind of killing them. Or there's like talk of like, you know, Chris the dad is obsessed by like keeping all the food vacuum sealed because he thinks a bear's going to come and kill them all. And you think, oh, at some point there's going to be some bear attack, but none of that happens either. It's like a film that's quite brave in that not letting too much happen, but finding drama and these kind of small interactions. And again, that might sound boring, but I found it really gripping to watch.
Excellent. Ellie, what did you think? Good one? Question mark? Good one? Exclamation mark.
Good one. I fully agree. I think that like it's really interesting. As you say, it's a film where like not a lot happens, or there's not a lot that you can describe that happens without giving it away, and yet a really kind of nuanced relationship develops between these characters, and there's kind of always a shifting sort of sense of where things land. And yet like a big part of its runtime is in its sort of it slows itself down. It like, you know, is very in touch with the natural world. There's these montages where you just kind of see, you know, these beautiful vistas, whereas it meant to be the Catskills, and so like, you know, but at the same time, yeah, like from the start, it very smartly establishes this sort of dynamic that we're going to have for the rest of the film. Now, I saw it less than 24 hours ago, so I feel like it's still kind of hitting for me, which is really interesting. But I kind of went in, and it caught me up to begin with because I was a bit skeptical because it seemed so apparent just what this film is about, right? Like, there's the teen girl, she's obviously like more independent and more self-reliant than her like hiking dad, and these sort of hyper masculine middle-aged men are in fact shielding their own like insecurities, their own sort of, you know, I don't know, like very like their own lack of experience or their own kind of like emotional immaturity, and even as like you have these moments where the characters kind of feel a bit more human, and we take time to remind ourselves that, you know, divorced dads have feelings too, that there is kind of a, you know, wider threat of kind of like what can happen to girls in the woods, and that's kind of like brought up at the film's crux, but not a lot really goes on. And yet, even though I kind of like felt, oh, I've like clocked it and I know where this is going, and the film never really changes what it is, what this dynamic is. It never really like subverts what you think might come out of this. It's still really impressive to me just how betrayed you feel by these characters and their insufficiencies, when the film has suggested the whole time exactly where it's going. So it kind of manages to hit its emotional notes really, really well, and winds up being a film where you know what it is, and it's going to be frustrating, but the film is there to frustrate you. It's there to kind of put you in her shoes. And I'm sure that there's a huge audience of people who have been in this situation or are in similar situations with kind of like rubbish parents who are like really insensitive to the problems you face, that'll really connect with this. But it manages to just like play with that kind of strange emotional space in an interesting way. It makes itself more frustrating by juxtaposing these really awkward dialogues with all this beautiful imagery. Like I said, these vistas, but also there's like close-ups of like worms crawling through the dirt and like stones in the river, and it just feels like it's got this like lovely little like acoustic guitar folksy kind of backing, and it really is like just a great kind of like attempt to capture like the beauty of nature. And yet, you know, that those moments, those rare moments of peace that you get are ruined by the fact that you know who you're on this trip with, and you know what you're going to be going back to when the characters sort of pick up talking again. So it's interesting. It's like it's a film where, you know, you've got this kind of like uncomfortable dynamic in it. It's aware of how claustrophobic it is, and also like the fact that, you know, there's loads of women who are mentioned in the film that don't appear in the film. You kind of like, the girl has to sit there and let her dad talk about her mom, and you kind of like don't ever really get the mother character on her own terms. All of the women are kind of explained through the veil of these two kind of middle-aged jerks. But yeah, like, I don't know, that's sort of what's weird about the film, is that the point is to kind of rile you up and I don't know, like, make you kind of connect. I think that the only thing that I maybe felt like it could have gone a bit further in is maybe furnishing the characters a bit more realistically. It did feel at times like they were the kind of characters that you make just to make one broad point. So, like, the fact that, I don't know, they never talk about the fact that this kind of, like, hyper-masculine peacocking, this kind of, like, boomer attitude, is kind of in step with, like, the MAGA movement. Like, kind of that new emerging or like long emerged type of toxic masculinity isn't ever acknowledged. Not saying that these characters should be like Trump supporters or whatever, but even the fact that it can't kind of like take a minute to connect it to a very real thing, that it has to stay broad, felt a bit, I don't know, I felt like the film was so well made it should have had the confidence to push those characters into a little bit more of a real dimension.
See, that's what I kind of like, because like on the surface these are kind of liberal guys. These are guys who probably would have voted for Obama the third time. You know, these are the kind of guys who probably wouldn't associate themselves with being like MAGA guys or Trump guys, but the misogyny drips out of them. The way they talk about their ex-wives, and the way they're so pitiful, and like cannot see that actually maybe they're the problem. Maybe they're the problem, that things haven't worked out in their life. They blame everyone else. And I think what was clever about the film is like, so I've seen loads of films about deadbeat dads, and they usually, there's a kind of chink of redemption or something there, but we don't really get that here. Like the filmmaker doesn't let them get away with it. Like, there's never a point where like, well, like, oh, they never understood how to be fathers. There's never like any excuses made for them, which I kind of liked. I like the fact it's just like, you know what, you aren't trying that hard. These are kind of like lazy. These are not like working hard enough. You know, stop being so sorry for yourself. So the film is like, yeah, the film isn't sentimental in that way, which I really, really liked.
Wonderful stuff. It sounds like it was a good one. There we go. But how good out of 5, Jamie?
Again, I was really happy with this film. I do think it's like feels slight in a way, but that's part of its, the elegance and delicacy is part of the point. So I'm going to give it a 4. Yeah, I think it's a good film.
Nice. Ellie, what do you reckon?
I would say another 3.5.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, sounds like it was a nice time.
What does that average out to?
at 3.75.
No, I know how to do maths. I mean,
Okay. Well, then I don't understand the question.
Probably rounds up to a 4.
Yeah.
Are we round? Do we round up? Or do
We round
round
up,
up,
yeah.
yeah.
We're positive people around here, as much as it doesn't seem like. Okay, so for a bit of chat, because we all love to talk about the films, Wes Anderson has got a new one out. It's called The Phoenician Scheme. Off mic, we discovered that the Phoenicians were a civilization based around what is now Lebanon, I believe. I'm getting a thumbs up from Anahit, so
Yep.
there we go. So yeah, ahead of that one coming out, we thought we'd talk a bit about Wes Anderson, some of our favourite films, some of his hallmarks, some of the things that he has done over the years. Makes him sound like a criminal. He's not. He's just made films. Top lad. The only note, as Anahit mentioned earlier on this document, is fancy lad. I feel like maybe I'll come to Anahit, who didn't make that note, but I feel can talk about the fanciness of this lad. He's got a very specific... The thing about Wes Anderson that people always say, he's got a very specific aesthetic and vibe, doesn't he?
Yeah. He
Would you like to talk about that briefly while Jamie has a glass of water?
Yes. While the film editor rehydrates. Yeah, I actually find like that idea that we have about Wes Anderson's like aesthetic. I think we actually are projecting that from his newer films a little bit into his older films. Like that idea of like the very, what is it called? Like the planimetric, is that the word? Where it's like everything is very static and everything is like contained within the frame. Like that to me is very Grand Budapest Hotel, very The French Dispatch. And it's actually been really lovely returning to some of his older films because that aesthetic sense is still there, but they're like a little bit rougher around... Oh, sorry. There we go. Is that okay?
Yes, that's good.
They're like a little bit rougher around the edges. And you can kind of see... I think he's actually one of those directors where you can see his... like his aesthetic and his craft and his like identity, I suppose, developing across his career, which is like really lovely when you can see someone like becoming more and more themselves. But yeah, I really love. Are we just going to like talk about ones we love?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would do really, really like his older ones actually. Like the Grand Budapest Hotel is obviously really gorgeous. I really like the French Dispatch. My favorite one is the Darjeeling Limited, which is just very beautiful. And I think actually some of the like really, really big ensemble cast ones are very fun, and it's very fun doing a like Where's Wally of like every single person you've ever seen on like in cinema in your life is like in those films. But the ones where it's like a slightly more contained cast and you kind of have this quite like... His filmmaking style is very structured, like both in terms of its aesthetic and in terms of its dialogue and in terms of its like narrative. Like it's quite broken up and quite like everything kind of happens in like little parts. And it's really nice, the films, I think, and the Darjeeling Limited does this for me, where there is a real sense of intimacy that kind of brings all of that, or like sort of subverts that to a certain extent. So you have these... Darjeeling Limited is about these three brothers, the sons of Bill Murray. And I think it's Adrian Brody, Owen Wilson, and Jason Schwartzman, I'm pretty sure. And they have convened in India a year after their father's funeral, and they're like doing this kind of trip to sort of like remember him, but they're also like regrouping as brothers. And it's a lot about like that family dynamic, and a lot about grief, and a lot about them coming to terms with their childhoods. And so you have this like very, sometimes quite silly... I think a couple of podcasts ago we compared him to Jacques Tati, was it? A little bit. Like you have this very kind of quite funny, very dry, very fragmented kind of filmmaking style. But then the things that he's talking about are so raw and so heartfelt, and all about, yeah, like how do you come to terms with your childhood, and how do you forgive your parents, and how do you like reconnect with like those parts of you in childhood that you want to leave behind, and you have to reconnect with them in adulthood because you have to be able to connect with those people in adulthood. I don't know, I just think there's something really beautiful actually about the bits of his filmmaking that actually are not to do with aesthetic, actually. And I think they're always like so nice and surprising because he is such an aesthetic director that it's always... I feel this way a little bit about Sofia Coppola as well, when there's just something beneath it and you're like, oh, it's not just about that. Like you're not just using this, like that accusation that can be leveled at them that it's like all style and no substance. And actually what I love is the substance is so like knotty and weird and difficult and like involved, really. So yeah, that's what I think about Wes Anderson.
Yeah, I think a lot of his films, the more you think about them, tend to be about or represent or show like hierarchies of various forms. So you have all these like family groups where like there's a matriarch and patriarch and then a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
And then you have things like Moonrise Kingdom is one of my favorites because it has, you know, you've got the kind of like it's various different like families that are all sort of coming apart, but there's also the kind of like scoutmaster. And he often does this thing in the later ones when he's got loads of people, he's got like 40 actors to fit in, where there'll be like a kind of superstructure layer above all these people, and it'd be like, hang on a minute, it's not Gene Hackman, the other one, you know, Jamie, you know, the fella with the mustache.
Willem Dafoe?
Willem Dafoe. No, not Willem. Is it Willem Dafoe? It's not Willem Dafoe. Who's the your man? He's
there's so many-
wait for it. He's in Pulp Fiction. He plays Harvey Keitel.
Oh, right.
Harvey Keitel was the name we were looking for. So Harvey Keitel is in it as like the kind of the head of the Scouts, and like Tilda Swinton is like this social services woman who is like she's the level above everybody else, and it's this kind of like cascading, sort of like almost like Laurel and Hardy,
Like petty bureaucracy.
yeah, like Marx Brothers thing of just like there's just endless people coming in and out of the frame who are all like, this person is this person's boss, but this person is this person's boss, and then it kind of cascades back down again. But one of the things about Moonrise Kingdom that I think makes it actually work really, really well is that it manages to pair that with an actually nice, sweet, well-rounded story about two people in the middle. So I think that some of the kind of big diorama-looking ones where it's like every single fucker you've ever seen and enormous sets and like loads of fancy outfits, they can feel a little bit like, I think I've made this comment in the past on this podcast, it's like watching someone play The Sims with all the cheats on.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's got everything you could ever need. He's got all the actors, he's got all the sets, got all the props, all the paint you could ever want. And he seems to just be able to like, and it's partly just a record of his like skill at convincing people to go along with his projects and his skill at raising money and his the actual reality that he has access to lots of money.
Yeah.
So he's able to do these things, but like sometimes the better ones are the ones where he's able to like make it super personal and super structural and then show how those two things interact with one another.
Yeah, I think that thing you're saying about hierarchies is really interesting. There was something I read, probably like on Tumblr or something, when David Lynch died, actually. It was about him, and it was talking about how he was someone that just like understood and was interested in kind of essentially like vulnerability, but in like quite a structural way, in the way that like people can do harm to other people, and he was always just like on the side of the people being harmed. And I think there is actually a little bit of that with Wes Anderson as well, where he is just quite interested in how people can hurt each other, and not in this really violent, horrible way, but in the ways that just like your parents will fuck you up kind of way. But they will also really, really love you. And I think there's something really beautiful about the very complicated ways that he understands family dynamics and their like infinite potential for harm and care. And it makes his films like very sad, but also very sweet and very tender. And I really like that about them.
I hadn't really thought that there is kind of like a shift in his focus. I think that I hadn't really thought until you said about it that his earlier films do tend to be about like weird kind of complicated families working out their issues. But in more recent years, since maybe Grand Budapest Hotel and then with things like French Dispatch and even Asteroid City, like those aren't necessarily films that are about, they contain family relationships, but it seems like they're more, he's sort of tried to broaden his scope and tried to kind of make films about the process of making art in general, or some kind of like, a narrative that kind of serves a grander purpose, a commitment to kind of something like greater than just one family unit. Which is really interesting. And I think that I recently watched for the first time Isle of Dogs, and I was really interested to see the ways in which it was different from his other animated feature, Fantastic Mr. Fox, because Fantastic Mr. Fox has that, right? That, like, it is just a family unit, really, trying to work out. And there's, of course, the metaphor of, like, Bill Murray's character trying to reckon with his own nature, try to be more than just a fox, which is like a scavenger.
George
or a
Clooney.
vagrant.
George
Clooney, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's an easy mistake to make. It's a
Yeah,
Wes
yeah.
Anderson film. Bill Murray's going to be
Bill
in
Murray's
it.
the badger.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say, I'm just gonna say Bill Murray for every role that I mention in a Wes Anderson
you'll
film.
probably be right.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll
lot of the
we'll
time.
comp something else in if it
Yeah.
turns out to not be Bill Murray, but most of the time it will be
But
Bill
then,
Murray.
if you think about those moments in Fantastic Mr. Fox, where it feels a lot more like the sort of symbolism of this one lone wolf that he sees, and it kind of ties it into something a lot more mythic and a lot more kind of primal. That is kind of the impression that I got from Isle of Dogs way more. Isle of Dogs is kind of a quest, right? Where it's like dogs and humans have been split up, and this boy comes to the Isle of Dogs to try and recover his, so they have to take him with them, and it's kind of an odyssey, and it represents something greater. It's like a battle to save, to heal the broken bond between man and his best friend, which is what I really liked about Isle of Dogs. What I didn't like is his very broad cultural references that you see in things like Grand Budapest Hotel, where he's willing to kind of make a hodgepodge of kind of like cultural references to create some idea of Europe. But in Isle of Dogs, he seems reluctant to confess that there already is a history of Western filmmakers kind of like objectifying like the Asian aesthetic, which I think was interesting and worth kind of like getting into, because like he has limitations and flaws as a director.
I think part of that comes from he's such a cinephile. Like, I feel like when he's making a film, like when he makes the Darjeeling Limited, he's like referencing like Indian cinema, like Satyajit Ray and people like that, or he's making Island Dogs to a less extent, but he is referencing Kurosawa. When he's making Budapest Hotel, he's referencing like Lubitsch a little bit, like in other kind of European filmmakers. So like from the 40s and stuff. So that is like, I think he's such a kind of like little nerd. His references always come from either literature or films. Like, and I feel like sometimes the outside world doesn't come in, and that's I totally agree with you. I love his early stuff, and I think that's probably, like, I'd say his first three. So Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and the Royal Tenenbaums are my three favourites. I think part of it is because his kind of style hasn't calcified. Like, he hasn't got into the kind of, like, he's got really into structures recently as well. Like, he'll put like stories within stories. They're very chapterized. They're kind of like, there's this kind of Russian doll effect. But those early films are a bit looser. They don't really have that. They're kind of just a bit simpler, just single stories, quite straightforward narratives. They're also, interestingly, his early films that I like are all co-written by Owen Wilson. And like, I think maybe his co-writer, like, it's interesting looking who's co-writers is on some of the films, because like, I think Owen Wilson, there is a kind of like just general warmth that he brings to the films, and those first three films that aren't in the later films, the later films are a bit colder maybe. And there are exceptions. Like, I also love, I agree, Moonrise Kingdom's like a really warm one, and partly that because he's set outside. Like, when his films are set outdoors or in a real location, you don't get this like stage bound feeling. Like it feels like he's moving around characters in a little diorama, which is like the big criticism that people give to him. But I think that is the feeling when you watch something like The Life Aquatic, say, because it's so much about the set, or The French Dispatch, which is one I really didn't get on with. But the ones I do like it as well as the first three are the animations. I think because there's something about like all his films are almost like nowadays stop motion animations. It feels like he's moving because he asked the actors to be like so mannered, and the sets are so like precise, and it does feel a little bit stiff, a bit like they are like puppets that are being maneuvered. So that's why when he goes and does a stop motion, I feel like this is his natural home. Like, I love Fantastic Mr. Fox. I really like Island Dogs as well. So yeah, like, I'm really up and down with him. He's clearly a great filmmaker. Like, he's so innovative. There's like, I love that there's this filmmaker who has such a strong aesthetic that he speaks to a lot of people. He's very popular, especially younger people. Like, I feel like he's like kind of the auteur that a lot of young people get into early on. Like, definitely when I was like that's probably why I like the first early ones, because like that's when I was really getting into cinema. Like, when I was like 18, something like that. Like, I was seeing like things like Bottle Rocket and Rushmore for the first time. To me, he's in the same canon as like when I was like seeing Tarantino, and I was seeing Steven Soderbergh, like, these filmmakers who I associate so much with 90s cinema. Like that's what I also see Anderson being in that sort of pile as well. So yeah, great filmmaker. He doesn't always do it for me. I sometimes wish he would sort of loosen up a bit and just like be a bit freer. And maybe work again with Owen Wilson. I think that's all I'm going to say. From like, I feel like those ones have a kind of real warmth that I return to again and again, and I don't really return to things like Life Aquatic or, even the Grand Budapest Hotel, which I can appreciate how beautiful it is, and I love Ralph Fiennes' performance in that. But actually, apart from Ralph Fiennes, everything else seems a bit kind of like mannered and wooden. So yeah. Great filmmaker, but he doesn't always do it for me.
I feel like Asteroid City, though, was like quite a return to
Yes.
that sort of filmmaking,
I
right?
agree.
In that, yeah, you're right. It still has that like breadth of cast, and it is a lot about the creative process, but it is also about like parenting and grief, and it has like Jason Schwartzman, his big sad eyes,
Yeah.
and I think that was like the most I have felt like drawn to him in like quite a while.
I agree with that as well. Like, yeah, and again, it's because it's maybe outdoors. Like, it's
Yeah,
a bit
yeah,
more
yeah.
kind of. He's like, there's like, he's also a set as well, but like he's in the desert.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you can feel the kind of real place.
Yeah. I think there was probably also on Tumblr a post someone made about Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I keep forgetting is one of his, that was like, oh yeah, this is a film about like understanding that your parents like really, really love you, but they will fail you. Like that is just, which I just think is like a crazy way to adapt a Roald Dahl story. Like that has like such a particular kind of like energy and voice to it. I just think it's like so fucking cool to like read this book about like this crazy family of foxes and be like, well, what if it's like the Auden poem? Is it the Auden poem? No. Yeah, no, Larkin. The Your Parents Will Fuck You Up one. Yeah, which I think is just sick.
What a positive note to end on. So the Phoenician Scheme is out not this week, coming next week. And loads of the other Wes Andersons are on various places, Disney Plus, Netflix. Asteroid City is on Netflix, I think, and some of the other ones are on Disney.
The shorter ones.
Yeah,
that you made.
the Wonderful Life of Henry Sugar. There were a bunch of Roald Dahl.
Yeah, the
adaptations.
Ratcatcher.
Swan, Poison. I'm reading them now. I'm not just saying.
Just saying words.
Yeah.
Swan, Poison. That's Final Destination again.
Duck.
I would also shout one thing he's actually really great at is his adverts. Like I love his adverts. Have you seen like the adverts he's made?
No, I didn't.
Oh, the one he made for that Swiss pen company with Timothy Friend, and
I'm not sure if I've seen that one. Like he has a really good one for American Express, which is like it's on a movie set and he's in it. He's really good. He like talking about Monsieur Hulu's Holiday. There's one with Brad Pitt. I think it's for a like Visa or something like that, and it's Brad Pitt is like playing like essentially Hulu, getting like trying to go on holiday and causing
that's
disaster.
fun.
So he's actually like he's great in shorts. And like he's made a few shorts to coincide with some of his films, like the Darjeeling Limited has a great short
with
that
Natalie
accompanies it.
Portman.
Yes,
right?
that gives you a kind of prequel to
Yes.
that film, which
Yeah.
is really good. Actually, I think I prefer it to the film. But I'd also say I've just realised I do like the ones with Jason Schwartzman as well. Like Jason Schwartzman heavy films, I'm a big fan of. So.
yeah, and also it was Rupert Friend who was in the thing that he did. It was all set in like a mountaintop cabin. There was lots of Wes Anderson diorama stuff. There was a shifting wooden wall. They talked a lot about pens. It's great.
That makes sense because he was in. Was it The French Dispatch?
I believe so.
I think he's also in some of the new Dahl ones as well.
Yeah, he's in some of the new Roald Dahl shorts. Apparently, they all just turn up to set.
Oh, maybe it's that.
And then he just says, "Okay, right, you're coming with me in this van."
We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about
that's
that.
crazy.
I also love that he is like getting a nice kind of. I like that kind of rep style that he's put together, and I like it's kind of, even though I don't like the later films, I like how he brings the gang back together again and again.
Sweet.
You know.
Yeah.
Are we? Is that us? I think that's probably us. Probably a solid place to end. Just over 1 hour, so that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Just here.
Thanks, Anahit.
Thank you.
We'll be back in 2 weeks, well rested, as you can tell. If you've enjoyed this podcast, and my God, I can't think why you wouldn't, do leave us a good review and tell your friends to listen to the Cine Skinny, but tell them to watch out for things that look like grim portents of death on their way home.
Exactly.
It's a callback to earlier in the episode. Right, okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.